So most of you who have listened to the show know of my complete disdain of remakes and reboots. I've always seen remakes and reboots as those lazy attempts to cash in on an original success. Now don't get me wrong, there are a few that I will grant a waiver to. The reboot of Total Recall gets a favorable mark in my opinion, mainly just because it's just a different take on the Schwarzenegger version, which in its own right is mainly a cobbled together adaptation of a P.K. Dick short story known as We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. John Carpenter's The Thing is a 30-year reboot of The Thing from Outer Space, but with a twist and a more modern special effect, and of course, made for a rated R audience. Then you have Dune, which I know I'm not the lone voice that insists this is a reboot that needed to be done after the travesty that David Lynch foisted on us almost 40 years ago. So now that my qualifications and caveats are out of the way, here's another one that I think is an exceptional remake and in my humble opinion, far better than the original. And here I am to tell you why. The movie in question is the 1999 remake of The Thomas Crowne Affair. Now the original was introduced in 1968 when I was just a wee baby, and it starred Steve McQueen as Thomas Crowne and Faye Dunaway as the sexy and determined insurance investigator Vicki Anderson. So in this version, Crowne is a rich banker who is your classy man about town who develops plans for bank robberies and then hires a bunch of guys to do the actual work, whereas he just shows up at the end to take his share. Miss Anderson is the insurance investigator who is called in on the job to find out what's going on. So let's fast forward around 30 years, and Pierce Brosnan is Thomas Crowne, and the gorgeous Renee Russo plays Catherine Banning, who fills the role of insurance investigator. Instead of knocking over banks, this Thomas Crowne has an eye for art, and rather hire people to do the work of stealing the art, he does it himself. So the 1999 remake is directed by John McTiernan, and the score was done by the legendary Bill Conti, which just adds a lot more depth and feel to this movie compared to the 68 version, which is just really that hyped up and disjointed jazz rhythm that was popular at the time. Brosnan is just perfect as the suave, self-assured billionaire who only does this because he's an adventure addict and loves art and it's not about the money. At this time, Brosnan was already 2 movies in as James Bond after replacing Timothy Dalton, and he brings much of that Bond persona into the Thomas Crowne character. It's self-assured, class act, and super confident guy who doesn't let anyone get close to him or one step ahead of him. So the central plot is Crowne pulling off a heist of a priceless Monet painting that's at the New York Metropolitan Art Museum, and Catherine Banning as the insurance investigator trying to solve the crime. Like Crowne, she's sharp, confident, and determined to do whatever it takes to recover the painting. This leads them to get together where Crowne's ability to truly trust a woman comes into play, and Banning has to decide whether her quest for the painting can override her growing love for Crowne. Dennis Leary plays second fiddle to the movie as Detective Michael McMahon of the New York Police Department, who is tasked to investigate the heist. What's really refreshing about his role is that he's not relegated as comic relief and actually plays a very solid performance of wanting to find the painting, but is also concerned about how far Banning will go to achieve her goal. So I truly love this movie. The cast, the direction, soundtrack, and the whole plot is just such a refreshing take on the 68 version, which just seemed disjointed, and in a word, it's boring. I got zero chemistry between McQueen and Dunaway, and perhaps this is just a personal bias, but McQueen just did not fit the role in my opinion. His portrayal comes off almost as childish when he makes his first score, cackling like a kid whose teacher just sat on the whoopee cushion he put on their seat. So as remakes go, I highly recommend this one, as I think it's definitely the best remake out there. So that's it, folks. I will see you next time. Until then, ciao.